Hello everybody, welcome back to another car show video. It is only our third one of the year, but I think there's some quality over quantity going involved, and this has definitely got some quality. Not only do we have Concourse D'Elegance, we also have 3 different museums of various showroom interior quality. From the high decor of the Auburn-Duesenberg Museum to the sort of normal Truck and Auto Museum, and then there's a warehouse for the British Transport Museum, and, good for them, run by volunteers. Love to see it. But we're going to start out with the Miscellaneous group, and yes, the Germans are in the Miscellaneous group, there just weren't enough of them. You had the BMW 2002 Tii, the fastest one they made, even faster than the Turbo. You had the AMG GT Black with the crazy double wing. You even had, not a Porsche, a Roof RGT, very rare. You don't see those very often at all, much less in the United States. And if you want something a little slower but still blue, the Saab 9.3 Viggen, a brilliant low mileage example, great quality, great condition. You don't see them in this type of condition very often. They only have like 150,000 miles on them. Then there's the Belgian Metallurgique Speedster, one of the first boat tail designs ever, and the only one in America, probably because nobody knows how to pronounce it. Then we have the French, with the Citroën 2CV in brilliant two-tone paint, and the Peugeot 402 Donnelmont Roadster Special Sport. It may be mint green, which is not the best color scheme, but it is a stunning piece of design, built in 1936, won its class at Le Mans in 1937, meant to usher in a new era of Peugeot as a performance car maker, and it is one of only 53 Roadsters ever built. It's a stunning piece of design, I gotta say. So let's go to the Italians. Often who you think of when you think of extreme, beautiful styling, You got your Fiats, like the 600 Multipla, sort of weird, but kind of interesting with the two-tone. You got a Lamborghini Huracan Strato that was actually used on the dirt. Can you imagine that? That's probably the best car in show just because they actually use it for its intended purpose. You had the Ferrari hypercars of the 2000s. Sadly, no pre-2000s hypercars, but if I have to see the Monza SP1 and the Daytona SP3, I guess I'll take it, because they're probably the best modern Ferraris, period. I also quite like the 12-cylinder. It's a good evolution of the 812, and I wish the hood was down so you can see the little flowing lines better, because it is a really elegant piece of design, harkening back to the 365. Speaking of harkening back, the Cistella 202 by Pininfarina, one of their first post-war designs, and it laid the foundation for all future Ferrari designs. It's not Ferrari fast, it has a 1.1-liter Fiat engine, but it is very beautiful. Now, the British, most of them were in better condition than that Rolls-Royce, I must be honest. But they certainly had some unique ones, Like the Vauxhall 14.6, a pre-war Vauxhall that did 0 to 50 in 18.2 seconds. Very impressive, and yet that is somehow slower than a Humber Super Snipe Series 3, the first production car in Britain with dual headlights, the more you know, and it's even slower than a Hillman Imp, which I didn't think was possible. Yeah, there were lots of odd British cars here. I mean, yeah, you had, some of your standard roadsters like the Triumph Herald and the Sunbeam Alpine. Really classic pieces of design that sometimes may or may not be turned into a boat. You had the more traditional British cars, the BMC Mini, in this case the Mini Cooper S, and its predecessor, the Austin A35. Just what you would expect from a British transport museum. It was a restoration shop, so you had this Morris Minor 1000 Woody that was going through restoration. You could tell it was all original because it was rotten to the core. Then there was the Peerless GT, one of the weirdest cars I've ever seen. It's based off a Triumph 3. It was considered very fast, but it had poor build quality compared to other British sports cars. And if your build quality is poor compared to other British sports cars, my God, that thing must be terribly built. I can't even imagine. No wonder they only sold 325 of them in 3 years. Yikes. This was interesting. The Ford Puma. It was literally just imported this year. It became legal after 25 years to import. It's not the racing Puma, but it's good to see different vehicles, no matter how normal they are. And I quite like the Puma as a very understated bit of bubble design. Now, if we can go back to what Britain is known for, we had, like I said, the traditional roadsters. And some untraditional ones, you know, it's nice and all having the Austins, but the MGs were really striking to me, specifically the MGSA Tickford foursome you see here. It's the largest one ever built, at 16 feet long. There's less than 100 left in the world, and it was rebuilt by the coach builder Tickford. Very rare, meant to rival Jaguar, and it didn't, because the war started not long after it was produced. So, a little bit of unique trivia for you. Now, we have to talk about the Jaguar 3.8 family, because there was the 3.8-liter sedan, which was one of the world's first, maybe the first, super sedan, because it had the same engine as the XK150 that you see here, and the fastest production car in the world, the XK120, and the most beautiful car in the world, the Jaguar E-Type. The fact they put that engine in a sedan is wild. So let's go a little more modern, though, with Aston Martin, the new Vanquish. I actually quite like the look of this. It's stunningly beautiful, very aggressive. And it really harkens back to those late 70s, early 80s Bulldog styling. It's really cool. But Lotus unquestionably had the biggest display, from the Europa to the L-Cat. I mean, it was an eclectic collection of Loti, shall we say. This is an S4 Esprit, but it doesn't have the V8, it has the 4-cylinder, so it's actually pretty rare in the US. I think they said this is the only one in red with the 4-cylinder engine, because the V8 was just so much more popular. But nothing beats the Elan. The Elan might be the best Lotus ever built. Simplify, then add lightness. It perfectly embodied Colin Chapman's philosophy, and it is a stunningly simple yet beautiful design. Maybe the best car I've seen in a long time outside of, like, the Goodwood racing events and whatnot. It's that good. Although I do have a soft spot for the Reliant Regal. It's not the Robin, it's its sibling, and you gotta love a three-wheeler. They're ridiculous, they're silly, and I love them to death. This is an Austin 7, but it was the American Austin 7, an export variant. And even back then, Americans liked big cars. The Austin 7 was not big, so they didn't sell, even with 40 miles to the gallon. They would much rather have 4 miles to the gallon with things like the Power Wagon, or the Ranchero, or any of the other massive pickup trucks that we have here, or the massive 7-liter muscle cars like the GT350 powered by a Cobra engine, and even more special, an original 1969 Camaro, Super Camaro by Don Yenko. The only original Camaro with the L72 V8, one of only 11 in orange with a manual transmission. I never thought I would see a genuine Yenko Camaro. They are super rare, super valuable, and use the Copo system to historic, epic maximization. It's one of the best Chevrolets ever built, and Chevrolet didn't even authorize it, which is a bit ironic. Now, the Tucker 48 is already pretty special, but chassis number 1050 might be the most special of them all, short of the Tin Goose prototype, because this was the last one ever finished by the Tucker Company. It was sold at their bankruptcy auction, and it has just 30 miles on the odometer as of 2024. It's the lowest mileage Tucker in the world, which is honestly a bit sad, considering it was the greatest car ever built ever at the time. But Tucker was not the only obscure American car maker. There was DeLorean, there was Hudson, there was International, there was Studebaker, then some real weird ones later on down the line. But I want to go back first to International with the Scout, the first SUV, the predecessor, if you will, including the Scout Rally from the later years. Very cool paint job, I must say, even though it's basically the same vehicle. And then there's Studebaker. Now, Studebaker had an enormous collection. from the fastest production car in the world, depending on how you measured it, with the Avanti, to some of their failed entries, shall we say, like the President Regal Roadster, their flagship, 110 horsepower inline-8, one of 5 that are still known to exist, and yet it's even more rare is the EU Standard 6 Roadster, also called the Dictator. It was a failed effort to expand into Europe, and it's one of just 4 right-hand drive Studebakers that still exist, because one of 5 wasn't rare enough. Now, this is a Brush E26 roundabout built in Hershey, Pennsylvania. 0.6-liter 4-cylinder, top speed of 35. That sounds terrifying in a vehicle like that. On the other end of the spectrum, with the Oldsmobile Series 28 Autocrat, with a 7.7-liter 4-cylinder, it cost $170,000 today. And then there's the Ruxton Model C sedan front-wheel drive, one of the first front-wheel drive cars ever. They named it after an investor they hoped would bet money in, and instead he sued them for using his name without permission. Oops. Now, this was built, the Imp cycle car, by the same guy who made the Stout Scarab. He's an eclectic designer, shall we say. It's built like a motorcycle, 2-cylinder V-engine, belt-driven, twin central seating arrangement, like an LCC rocket. So, they didn't take off very well because the Model T was out at the same time that was being built. But let's move on to the Cords, because these are some of the most beautiful cars I have ever seen. From the 851 Boat-Tail Speedster to the Moonshadow, called by Forbes the most beautiful American car ever, and it drove over 115,000 miles from California to the Red Sea. And this is an 812 Beverly Supercharged owned by E.L. Cord himself, the last Cord ever built ever by the company. Made at least 170 horsepower, and it must have been an absolute rocket. Now we go from the last Cord ever built to the first Duesenberg ever built in 1921, the Model A, as in Duesenberg number 1, not just first generation, the first Duesenberg ever from the company. So there you go. And they only got better from there, like the Model J Beverly Sedan, with a 420 cubic inch straight 8, or the even more beautiful Torpedo convertible coupe short wheelbase, one of only 6 ever built, and it needs that 265 horsepower V8, or inline 8, because it weighed nearly 8,000 pounds. So yes, the Duesenbergs are stunning, it's a doozy after all, but let's move on to the concept cars, like the Cadillac Torpedo, or the first generation Mustang Wankel rotary prototype. They only built one prototype because they didn't like the NSU engine for its fuel efficiency and reliability problems, but it does nothing compared to the Pontiac Pegasus. It was a pet project of the VP of Design, William Mitchell, based on a 1970 Firebird, but they stuffed a Ferrari 365 GTB V12 in it. Then they put the disc brakes from a Corvette on it, and then the dials, engine, transmission from a Daytona. They put a Ferrari Daytona in a Pontiac Firebird. That's wild. Then there's the AMP 1948 prototype built by American Metal to try and capitalize on that post-World War II boom, but they couldn't. So it was sold to Kaiser Frazer, and that also didn't work, and production ended in 1954. So let's move on to the race cars and go away from the failure. There were quite a few SCCA competitors, from the Sunbeam Tiger to the Mini Cooper to another Lotus Elan. This time, I'd never seen an Elan before in my life, and now there's the road car and the race car. That's an incredible car. No wonder it went racing, it's so good. It might actually be better than the Dallara EXP, although it would probably be lapped by lap 3. We go back to Duesenberg with an Indy car that raced from 1915 to 1917, and its sibling car, not this one, but its sister cars, actually won the French Grand Prix. Speaking of American oval racing, the fabulous Hudson Hornets was here representing NASCAR, but it was not the only very famous NASCAR in attendance. It was the most famous, but the Ford Torino Cobra Talladega driven by Benny Parsons himself in 1969, is also up there in terms of legendary race cars, although it never actually won Daytona. It tried to beat the Dodge Chargers, but it just couldn't. Those aero cars were just too fast. Speaking of aero cars going fast, there were two Bonneville speedrunners here, one being this Haas Racing 400-mile-an-hour record holder, and a semi-truck. The International Endeavor 3 went 226 miles an hour. I don't think it could tow anything, but that's a very fast semi-truck nonetheless. Held the class speed record for 10 years. Not bad for a diesel. So there you go. That has been the last few months of car shows. Again, I never thought I would see a lot of these vehicles. The Transport Museum itself was a welcome surprise. I expected the Duesenbergs and the Auburns and the Concourse to be fantastic, but the Transport Museum was a welcome little gift. And, well, there's still a few more events to go. See you then.